Well, I also want to welcome you all and thank you for coming, and thanks to our esteemed guests who have joined us. Bear with me for a moment because I want to just share some personal reflections. Jyotish and I have been on the road for 3 months, teaching, serving our guru in Europe, in India, and tonight in Chennai. This is our last satsang we will be giving. So I feel great joy in my heart that we've been able to serve our guru, to share his teachings with others, and also especially great joy to be finishing our trip here in Chennai, where we have many dear friends and have had such a wonderful, loving time together. So thank you all. I just wanted to share this evening has some personal significance for me as well. We fly back to US on hopefully on Tuesday, if you're not out of Delhi, if United Airlines flies, and I will also share with you on Friday. We have been invited by the United Nations to come, and Ananda Sangha will receive an award for upliftment of consciousness. So I want to start by sharing a story that happened to me some years ago. I was riding in a car with Swami Kriyananda and some others. Swami was in the passenger seat. We were coming back to Ananda village. Swami had done some programs in a nearby city. And a man was driving us, a friend of ours was driving us in his car, and it was a big 4-lane highway in California highway. Everyone was going very fast, and all the 4 lanes were filled with cars. And right in front of us, there was a big truck, and it had what they call a trailer hitch. And what was attached to it was a small trailer filled with goods and objects and so forth that was being hauled somewhere else. And Swamiji just paused and he looked and he said, that trailer hitch doesn't look very secure, because the trailer was sort of moving back and forth like that. And he said, let's pull out in front of that truck. I don't like us being behind it. So the driver switched lanes, pulled up, so we were just next to the truck that was hauling it. Just as we did that, that trailer hitch snapped, and the trailer went careening back behind us. And there were dozens and dozens of cars that had a huge pileup, and many people were injured. And we just kept driving because we couldn't stop. The traffic kept moving. But we were in stunned silence at what had just happened, because it was just a moment where Swami said, pull ahead, and then the accident happened. And so what happened there? What is the principle that we can understand about the benefits of the spiritual life? The world, we read in the Bhagavad Gita that the world is composed of different compositions of 3 qualities, or gunas. And the first one is the tamasic quality. This is the darkening or deadening, or the energy, lazy, low motivation, the energy that pulls us down into subconscious, not wanting to engage with the world. The next quality is the rajasic quality, or guna. And this is the activating, energetic, but also restless, often without focus or concentration. There's a little joke that sort of describes the rajasic quality. The first mate of a ship comes up to the captain and he says, "Sir, we're making very good time." And the captain said, "That's very good." He said, "But I have some bad news. We are lost." And so this is sort of describes the nature of rajasic. You can move a lot, and our age is characterized by that. We're like a ship with a huge sail, but a very small rudder. And so that's the rajasic quality. And then the third guna, sattva guna. This is the elevating energy, the calm, clear, detached, focused energy. And what happened in that scene where Swami Kriyananda told us to pull ahead of that car? If the driver or if the person in the passenger seat had been a tamasic person, they probably wouldn't have noticed. They would be half asleep and just trying to think about what they were going to have for dinner, and before they knew it, boom, they were hit head on. If the passenger had been a Rajasic person, they would have been on their cell phone and talking and looking all around, and they probably wouldn't have even noticed what was going on ahead of them. But Swamiji, through the practice of Kriya Yoga and his Guru's grace, was a sattvic consciousness. And so he was calm, he was aware, he was observant, and he was able to perceive that something wasn't right in what was going on there with that car. And he was able to change our destiny in that moment. And so the practice of these techniques they are very practical. Let's use another example. Choosing three of our friends, Mr. Tamasic, Mr. Rajasic, and Mr. Sattvic. And they're all going to go to apply for a job. Common occurrence. Well, Mr. Tamasic, being dominated by that downward pulling energy, his alarm clock goes off, but he oversleeps, and then he kind of puts on some old wrinkled clothes, and finally, so tired, drags himself into the interviewer, and he slumps down in the chair and kind of doesn't look at the interviewer and doesn't make eye contact and kind of mumbles a few questions. And the interviewer says, "Thank you very much. We will get back to you." Mr. Rajasic comes in, and he's got a lot more energy. He got up early, but he was surfing the internet and making phone calls. He had 3 cups of coffee before he left the house, and so he's very alert and awake, but restless, not focused. So he sits down before the interviewer, and he's looking at his watch, and his cell phone's going off, and he makes eye contact, but then his eyes are darting all over the room, and he can't really focus too much on what the questions are being asked. And the interviewer says, "Thank you very much. We'll get back to you." And then our friend, Mr. Sattvic, enters the room. He got up, went at the time he carefully chose the nice, fresh, pressed clothes to go in, kind of knew what the scope of the questions would be. He walks into the office, sits down, captures the interviewer with a calm, attentive gaze, answers the questions with full concentration and with confidence that he wants to do a good job and be a good employee. And the interviewer says, "Thank you very much. The job is yours." And it's a little example, but it helps us to understand that what happens to us is very much a reflection of our own level of consciousness. And this is where Kriya Yoga comes in. Because Kriya Yoga is the science of raising our consciousness. You know, Master says in Autobiography of a Yogi, and we will quote this many times because it is a living reality to us. We met a man recently who is the CEO of a large chain of hotels in India. And he said, "I read Autobiography 20 years ago. And he said, it wasn't like reading a book. It was like those words came off the page and they filled my heart, and I had darshan from that book." And it was interesting because he never followed up on it. But then we happened to meet him by chance, and we said, "If that book still has that impact, come take classes. You will see the benefit." But in Autobiography, it says, thoughts are not individually, but universally rooted. So we don't create our own thoughts. We tune in according to the level of energy of different strains of consciousness. And it can be a downward pulling energy, or it can be an upward pulling energy. I read a quote recently from one of my favorite human beings, Albert Einstein, who was a great mystic as well as a scientist. And he said, "Avoid negative people. They can find a problem for every solution." And so it is. Our thoughts are influenced by our environment. They are influenced by the society in which we live. They're influenced by the global consciousness. But we need to understand that we have a choice in what will influence our consciousness. And through the practice of effective techniques such as Kriya, we can raise our consciousness so that we are not merely a reflection of what's going on. As Swami Kriyananda would often say, we need to live in this world as a cause, not an effect. We need to be a cause to help others, to uplift others, to do good in the world. And so what Kriya Yoga does is it works, as Jyotish was implying, it works with the flow of subtle energy in the astral spine. And it enables us to draw more energy, to enhance the energy in the subtle spine so that we awaken higher centers of consciousness. And from those higher centers of consciousness, the world looks very different. Swami Kriyananda told a story when he was a young disciple in his guru's ashram. He, of course, the love of the disciple for the guru and the guru for the disciple is a very, very precious, precious thing. And Swami, as a young disciple, hadn't seen his guru for a few weeks, and he was missing him a lot. And then word came that Yoganandaji Master needed some big bottles of water brought up to his rooms. And so Swami said, "Oh, I'll do this and I'll get to see my guru." And so he was carrying these big bottles, 5-gallon bottles of water. But Yogananda was dictating letters, and he didn't look up. He just was working on what he needed to be doing. And Swami said he was making so much noise. He thought, well, maybe he didn't hear me that I was here. He was rattling the bottles and moving the chairs. Master never looked up. And then Swami left, and he became very downhearted. And he thought, oh, he doesn't love me. He doesn't care about me. I'm just a worker here. And he started going, he said, I could feel the energy just moving down my spine to lower centers of awareness. And then he said, do I like feeling this way? No. And he went and he practiced Kriya Yoga. He brought the energy up, held it at the spiritual eye. Immediately, his outlook changed. Immediately, he said, Master's so busy. I know he loves me. He lets me live here in his ashram with him. And if he took all the time with all of us, how could he carry on his worldwide work? And he said immediately he was filled with joy. And the next time Yoganandaji Master saw him, he knew what had happened, even though no words were spoken. And he said, very good. No more moods now. How can you help others if you have moods? But even moods are under our control. If we learn through these techniques to raise our energy, and then we need to understand too, and this is very important, Master said he has a wonderful series of exercises for drawing energy into the body called the energization exercises. He said they were his unique contribution to the science of yoga. Kriya Yoga is, of course, from time immemorial, but the energization exercises Master created, understand, using the principles of energy and magnetism. And so in referring to the energization exercises, Master said, the greater the will, because it's using will to send energy, the greater the flow of energy. And then he went on to say, the greater the energy, the greater the flow of magnetism. And I want to talk about this concept a little bit now of magnetism, because what is magnetism? You know, in the physical world, you can take a bar of iron and the molecules are randomly placed. But if you place that bar of iron next to another bar of iron, what happens? The molecules align themselves in north-south polarity. And in that alignment, the second bar of metal also becomes a magnet and can draw things to itself. Well, this is how the Guru works with us. When we align ourselves with him through attunement, through practicing his techniques, he gives us his magnetism to become Mr. Sattvic, not Mr. Tamasic, so that the jobs come, the decisions are made clearly, the circumstances that might be adverse are changed, and a level of protection. That magnetism entails protection. Never forget that. And I have seen it over and again in my life with devotees. I'll tell one story that a friend of ours, a disciple living at Ananda village, this story again involves a big truck and a trailer, but I do know other stories besides truck story, but it just occurred to me. But a friend of ours was driving a big truck pulling some lumber in a trailer behind. And Ananda village, as Sri Kartikeyanji so graciously described, is a very beautiful place in a very natural environment. But you have to go down a very steep river gorge and then up again to get to it. And so our friend, this disciple of Master, was driving a truck, and then he put his foot on the brake, and the brakes were gone. His foot went all the way to the floor. No way to stop. He was on a deep downhill slope. He tried to shift the car into a lower gear to slow it down, but it was too late. And this was a 2-lane road. He said, if I pull over to the left, he was going down, if I pull over, I might hit other cars and injure other people. So I'm just going to turn the truck over the ravine. And Master, it's up to you. He turned the wheel, the car began going down this very steep ravine. There was a little bitty bush, he said, just really as big as up to his knee. And that bush stopped this truck with this huge load behind it. Our friend Santosh was able to get out, totally unhurt. As soon as he closed the door, the truck and the trailer just went down into the ravine, totally destroyed. I could tell you dozens of stories like that. How the magnetism of Kriya Yoga, of having an uplifted consciousness, the magnetism of the grace of the Guru protect you. It says in Bhagavad Gita, even a little practice of this inward religion, and according to Yoganandaji, that phrase, inward religion, refers to the practice of Kriya Yoga. Even a little practice of this inward religion will free you from dire fears and colossal suffering. Now, does this mean that if you practice Kriya Yoga, you will never have a test in your life? Everything will go beautifully. You will never become ill. Nothing bad will ever happen? Of course not. But practicing Kriya Yoga will give you the strength to deal with whatever comes. I received an email just yesterday from a dear friend of mine, a very beautiful soul. And about a year ago, she tripped and fell down some steps and broke her leg very badly, right at the hip joint. And it was a difficult surgery, and they had to put in a titanium rod. And it didn't seem to, and she was discouraged about it. Why did this have to happen? But it slowly healed, but she still felt pain there. And after about 2 months ago, this pain began getting more and more intense. And she went and had some x-rays. And the x-ray showed, the doctor said, "I'm very sorry to tell you, but the first surgery was not done properly. And the titanium rod was not placed properly in your hip. We'll have to do it all over again." And she became even more discouraged at this point. But then she was a Kriya yogi. And she said, "No, I will not be defeated by this." And she had the second surgery. It turned out beautifully, totally healing nicely now. But she said, she wrote me, and I just received this yesterday. She said, I was, even in my recuperation, I was listening to talks of Swami Kriyananda, and he explained the nature of tests. Tests do not come to punish us. Tests come to make us stronger. Because and I remember I was there when Swami gave the talk many years ago. He said, think of the energy of a test, if it's an accident or an illness or loss of something in your life. Think of that energy like a bar graph going like that. That's the energy of the test. Our job is to supersede the energy of the test. And in doing so, we become stronger. So he said, God gives us these tests because he knows exactly how much energy we are capable of putting out to overcome that test. And he said, God will never give you a test, even though it may not seem like it, but he will never give you a test that you do not have the energy to overcome and to master it. And so does your life become a perfect, unending walk in the field of roses when you practice Kriya Yoga? This has not been my experience, I will say that. But it does become something that you have control over. Whatever happens, you can choose to put out the energy, because not only does Kriya raise the energy in the spine, magnetize the spine, give you the strength to overcome all obstacles that come in your way, but it also, in that magnetic current in the spine, this is where our past karma, the seeds of our past karma, the vrittis, the vortices, this is where they reside. And in that powerful flow of energy in the spine through the practice of Kriya, we begin to dissolve those vortices of energy. Just, you can think of the image of a stagnant stream filled with debris and leaves and sticks and stones. And if the energy current is weak, that stream remains cluttered. But if you introduce a strong current into that stream, it flushes out all the debris. That's a good image to bear in mind, because all that debris is like our past karma. That we think, oh, I have bad karma, what hope is there? There is hope. If we say, as Jyotish began the discourse this evening, what is my destiny? My destiny is not to remain as a limited man or woman with problems and concerns. My destiny is to awaken to my true nature in God, my true self in God. Once a woman was visiting Ananda village and just had been there a few days, and she came up to Swami Kriyananda. She said, "Oh, I'm so happy here. What is it? Is it the nice people? Is it the beautiful nature? Is it the harmonious environment?" Swami said, "It's none of those. You are experiencing the joy of your own self. It's as simple as that. And this is our destiny. Why take the long way around?" It says in autobiography, Kriya Yoga is the most effective technique for salvation through self-effort ever given to mankind. And so we invite you to explore this science. It will change your destiny. It will transform your life. It will improve every aspect of your life. I know, I have seen it. I have seen it in thousands of people. And Master's power and Babaji's power, Babaji came to the world to show us the potential of the human soul. through his immortal nature, through his transcendent blessing, through his care for all the world, and through the technique of Kriya Yoga. And so let us awaken. This is why these great ones came. We are not in this alone. They are behind us every step of the way, guiding us, until finally we can awaken and say, I too know now, Lord, that I am nothing but a spark of your light. And in that understanding, I find the meaning, the purpose, the destiny of my life.